When starting our application, users will be presented with this dual login screen. Each user can log in with an existing account, create a new account, or play as a guest. If users choose to play as a guest, their stats won't be tracked. We'll go ahead and create new accounts for both players. After successfully logging in, users will be taken to the map select screen, where they can view their total accumulated stats, or select which of the 4 maps they would like to play on.
For our video, we will simply use the original map. The first mechanic to speak about is income and spending. Each turn, you receive 1,000 funds times the number of properties you own in income, which you can use in factories to produce units. Each unit has a cost associated with it in increments of 1,000. Originally, you can only afford an infantry, but as you capture more properties, you'll be able to afford more expensive units.
Now onto movement and terrain. Movement and terrain in the game is based around 3 things: movement points, movement cost, and movement types. Every unit has a certain number of movement points. Every terrain block has a movement cost. So for recon, the terrain block for plains and the terrain block for roads have different costs. As you can see, the travel distance is different. At the same time, this is also because each unit has a certain movement type, and that affects how they move across different terrain. For infantry, for example, the mountains have a different cost from the woods. As you can see here, while the unit can move onto the mountain, it can't reach its full stretch compared to the road. At the same time, it can move further passing through woods than it can move through mountains. Emphasizing movement type, not only does it affect movement cost, but certain units can't travel onto certain terrain types. The tank, for example, has treads, and those with the tread movement types, while they can move very far, aren't able to move on certain terrains, such as the mountain.
The next mechanic to talk about is combat. For units to engage in combat, you must move them directly adjacent to a unit you wish to fight, and hit the fire button. Then, damage values are calculated for each unit you can strike. Each unit has a matchup value compared to any other unit it is attempting to fight. Infantry fare poorly against tanks, and decently against other infantry. But you also have to take into account the terrain that the enemy is on. Mountains provide massive amount of defense, compared to roads which provide no defense at all. However, as you see, the damage value for the infantry is still much higher, because infantry fight other infantry much more effectively than infantry can fight tanks. Now, when we hit the enemy, they took damage equal to the damage shown. We also took some damage, because we get struck back after we deal damage to them, which is why, despite being on the weaker terrain of forests, we still take much less damage than the enemy took. And as you can see, our giant tank has a lot more damage to the little tank than our infantry does. The final type of combat to talk about is ranged combat, however, which can only be done by artillery. If you make an artillery stay in place, it can fire on units 2 and 3 spaces away, but not units directly adjacent to it. And that is how combat works. The last mechanic to speak about is capturing. Using infantry, or RPG infantry, you can capture properties by moving on top of them and hitting the capture button. Each property has 200 HP, and each turn you capture, you subtract your health from the health of the property, meaning a full health unit can capture a property in 2 turns. When a property is captured, the color changes to your team, the number of properties you own increases, and your income per turn will now have gone up. Capturing properties is an integral part of the game, as increasing your income means you can produce stronger units, and of course one of the victory conditions is capturing the enemy HQ. The victory conditions for the game are destroying the last enemy unit and capturing the enemy HQ. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will use the battle victory condition, though both result in the same outcome. A victory screen is displayed based on the player that won. Stats are displayed based on what happened in the match, not your overall stats. And you are given the option to either play again, which takes you back to the map screen with the same players, or to log out, which takes you back to the login screen. And that is our game.